Next, all eyes are on the upcoming peace summit between President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. What does a successful resolution look like, and what kind of progress has truly been made so far? Joining us to discuss it all is former Congressman and U.S. Army veteran, retired Major General William Enyart. Good to have you with us today, General. President Trump has said that these negotiations have been the most protracted of all the peace talks he's had engaged in this term in office. Perhaps in part, that's due to there being so many stakeholders. Let's parse this out, though. What would a successful resolution look like for all major players here? Russia, Ukraine, the U.S., and Europe.
Oh, good morning, Steph. Frankly, I don't, I don't think we can get to a successful resolution of this crisis under the current circumstances, simply because the parties are far too far apart. For Putin, a success is a big chunk of Ukraine with complete subservience from whatever is left of Ukraine to Russia. Success for Ukraine, on the other hand, is recovering the land that Russia has already stolen and invaded, as well as recovering the nearly 20,000 children that Russia's kidnapped and taken to Russia. Success for the Europeans. That's standing up to the Russians and staving off any Russian advances, further advances towards NATO, particularly the Baltics, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, not to mention Poland. Certainly all of those countries, the Baltics, were part of the former Soviet Union. Success for Trump. Success for Trump is ending the conflict, even if it's just for a couple of years, so that he can make a bid for a Nobel Peace Prize. So the parties are just far too far apart. Putin did not waver at all apparently in this Alaska conference. And we need to look at it, too. Operationally, I believe this war somewhat resembles World War I in 1917, before the U.S. entered the war. Both parties are exhausted. Both parties are at a stalemate. And we need to remember that the Russian Empire collapsed shortly after that stalemated part of World War I.
So what lessons would we draw from that, potentially, if we're looking ahead here?
Well, currently, Russia controls less of Ukraine than it did when it invaded in 2022. Although it is gaining small bits and pieces of ground here and there at horrific casualties. And I think from a strategic point of view, Europe has greatly ramped up defense spending and its aid to Ukraine, although the U.S. is, with Trump at the helm, is wavering. Just as an example, Poland has doubled the size of its military in the last few years. So with Europe's newfound unity and its increasing armaments, I would argue that Russia is actually in a worse strategic position today than it was in 2014 or 2021. And Russia was so successful in Crimea in 2014 because the U.S. and Europe were engulfed in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So they didn't have the bandwidth to pay attention to Ukraine in 2014, whereas in 2022, the Biden administration and Europe were able to begin arming and rearming Ukraine.
And that's a fascinating look at the global dynamics as the U.S. is also trying to fend off various other aggressors in other parts of the world at this point in time. Potentially China looking at Taiwan, and of course there's Iran and Hamas. Looking specifically at the deal that's trying to be forged here, Putin has agreed to allow security guarantees for Ukraine and reportedly made concessions on land swaps as part of a potential peace deal. You mentioned that he hasn't budged. What could a security guarantee in a potential peace deal involve, and how would it differ from joining NATO?
Well, Steph, let's remember there were security guarantees in 2014 as well as 2022 when Russia invaded, respectively, Crimea and then Ukraine, Crimea, of course, being part of Ukraine. Those security guarantees dated back to the 1990s when the Soviet Union broke up and Ukraine agreed to surrender its nuclear weapons. At that time, Ukraine was actually the third largest nuclear power in the world. So those security guarantees proved to be absolutely worthless. Today, I would think that the only security guarantees that would really stop the Russians would be placing military forces of Europe and or the United States, preferably both, in Ukraine to act as a tripwire to prevent Russia from seeking to reestablish its dominance and reestablish its empire. Putin will never agree to that. That's Putin's worst nightmare. He does not want to see European or U.S. military forces in Ukraine because he would view that as an additional step to NATO surrounding him. So, and frankly, I don't believe that Trump would agree to put U.S. Forces in there. He wants to be able to have the option should Russia further attack Ukraine if European forces were there. He wants to have the ability to deny Article 5, the guarantees of the U.S. And indeed of all NATO partners that an attack on one is an attack on all. So it's a very, very difficult problem to resolve because, frankly, it's so hard to put together security guarantees that will satisfy Ukraine while at the same time being acceptable to Putin and or Trump.
Well, hopefully we learn much more following today's summit, and we can all get a better grasp of what are the next steps and where this is heading. Thank you so much for your insights and your time today, General Enyart. Good to speak with you.
Good to be with you, Steph.